Hi guys, Joe here, and welcome to 750 Gaming. In this one we'll take a look at my Space Wolves project and plough straight through the minefield that is female Space Marines. Alright. First things first, female Space Marines. Let's go through the minefield. And I say that purposefully. There are a ton of other videos and blogs on this subject, so I'm not going to spend too much time on the so-called debate. Safe to say, the lore arguments are quite well known. The idea that Space Marines have to be male was presented in some of the earliest writings and media that Games Workshop created regarding the 40k universe. It has also been noted that this idea was written into the lore as part of a marketing decision back in the late 80s, early 90s, where they created female Space Marine miniatures that, due to the general demographic majority of their sales base, didn't sell. Someone would point out that the reinforcement of this idea in the latest Horus Heresy rules and lore books puts the final nail in the coffin for the arguments for female Space Marines. But I beg to differ, completely disagree with all of those as definitive arguments, and here's why. The Horus Heresy happened in the 31st millennia. Any lore writings, old or new, concerning the Horus Heresy are lore writings about the 31st millennia. We, in Warhammer 40k, are talking about the lore of the 41st millennia, and due to the lovely new storylines that have advanced the timeline, we are now entering the 42nd millennia. An era of the universe where the story explains how Belisarius Cawl has spent the last however many centuries creating Primaris-sized Space Marines, and teamed up with the Eldar to resurrect a dead but not quite dead Bobby Gorilla Man. A time where technology has both evolved and regressed, where the lines between what is and isn't possible and what is and isn't heresy are more blurred than ever. I'm going to weigh in here with the notion that female Space Marines are probably now possible, both technologically and biologically speaking. So, there. No. Now, will Games Workshop ever do anything official concerning this? Maybe not. But it also kind of depends on what you'd want them to do. Because if you wanted or needed, shall we say, a faction aligned to the Imperium that was very obviously female in aesthetic, well, ta-da! You've got the Adeptus Sororitas, aka the Sisters of Battle, aka the Nuns with Guns. It's a fantastically thematic sub-faction with a great range of models and rules, and these days they are cool. So if you want an curvier bolt gun shooting chainsword wielding army of miniatures, then these are going to be your gals. But if you wanted female super soldiers, well, I'll be honest, Games Workshop doesn't really have to do anything. There they are. A Space Marine is a Space Marine. Girl, boy, everything, or indeed nothing in between. Last year, Arbitorian did a video on this topic, and he entered into a designer female Space Marine competition, and in the end, his entry was just a normal Space Marine. And I thought, yeah, you've nailed that. The stuff that a human has to go through for Space Marinerization is just insanity. The chances of an androgynous end appearance is highly likely anyway. Helmets on, who knows? Who cares? Call your Space Marines girls. No one will be able to tell. And so, the big question is probably why? After all, I've just said it really doesn't matter. Well, I just thought it'd be fun, and you know what? This is my hobby, and I play by the rule of cool. Well, what's cool to me, anyway. So, say you did want to make it a little bit more obvious to anyone looking at your Space Marine army that they were girls in power armour. What do you do? Well, you do the most simple bit of kit bashing anyone can do to make their army unique and different. You do a head swap. And if you want to see a whole chapter's worth of Lady Space Marines, then you need to go check out Alessandra Plays 40k over on Instagram. The Ultra McQueen is well worth a follow, and her Daughters of Guilliman, led appropriately by Roberta Guilliman herself, are glorious, and a far better go of this than me. But these are my Space Wolves. The whole Vikings in space thing is just really very cool. But again, as with all my armies, I want mine to be different and unique. So as I was flicking through the units and researching Vikingness, I kept arriving at the idea of a troop of shield maidens, for want of a better term. And so I started to play with the theme and arrived at this concept for my army. I also figured that of all the Space Marine chapters that were likely to go off of the Codex piece to the extreme where they would manage to have female Space Marines in their ranks, well, tell me it's not going to be the Space Wolves. Say the Wolf Priests have gone to observe the Fenrisian tribes on a recruitment drive, and the girls just happen to be the strongest. I mean, I'm channeling my inner Aloy here, but say they're the ones that survived the trials of Mordecai. Well, it looks like they're going to be accepted into the rank of the Space Wolves with open arms, whoever they are. And so, here are the Fenrisdottir, the daughters of Fenris. And I've got 1,000 points of them. And I wanted to go through them and show you what I've got. Okay, well, to start off with, we have a super mobile character unit in Sigrid Olthamordir. This is a from-scratch kitbash that I am really, really happy with. I got the wolf off of eBay for around £8 and had this Stormcast torso in stock, so to speak. I managed to repose her legs a little bit as well, so she would sit mounted, or at least sit well enough. And I tacked a few other bits from the bits box together, and well, here she is. For all intents and purposes, she is a Canis Wolfborn proxy. She could also be a standard Wolf Lord or Lady on Thunderwolf, but Canis Wolfborn works a little bit better, and as such, Sigrid can ride in alongside some Fenrisian wolves. This not only gives her a little bit more of a melee punch as and when they get there, but also provides a bodyguard unit to actually cover her en route to the fray. 30 points for a few extra wounds feels okay here for that purpose, and plus, Ulthamordir roughly translates as Wolf Mother, or Mother of Wolves, so it makes sense thematically. The wolves came in a pack of 6 from Etsy, and I'll show you what I did with the final one in a bit, but this is one of the coolest things I think I've actually kitbashed to date. Sigrid is often used as a name meaning victorious, but also horsewoman. Well, that ain't like any horse I've ever seen, but I'm not going to doubt her victoriousness. And then there's perhaps the coolest thing I've ever made, or made to date. I took a Phobos librarian, and with a bit of base work and with that extra wolf, I've got this rune priest summoning the spirit of a wolf out of the warp. Heavily inspired by a chap called Radicraft on Instagram, but I think he's actually changed his account name and profile now. Anyway, he had the OG idea and did this masterpiece that I now can't find a reference image of to show you, but I know that when I saw it, I knew I wanted to try and do a version of it for my wolves. And I'm pretty stoked by how she came out. She is called Isanger Olfakul, roughly translating as Ice Song Wolf Caller, but, you know, let's just call her Izzy for short. I decided I needed an on-foot melee character proper. I liked the punch that Ragnar Blackmane theoretically brings to the table, but of course I'm not going to use Ragnar, nor did I want to go by his model, cool as it is, just to kitbash it up to my wants and whims. So instead I found one of my spare Assault Intercessor torsos, of which I try to keep a good stock of for creative sprees, and I popped a few other bits together, as per. And here we have Anya Ulfurvinur, or Favoured Wolf Friend. Lovely stuff. The piece de resistance is the cutting and melding of a few different chainsaws together to create my own version of Frostfang, and it kind of works, whilst also giving me Cloud Strife Buster Sword vibes for those in the Final Fantasy VII know. The scrawlings on the blade are vague runic depictions of her name and the word Fenris, just for a bit more fun detail. And she runs into battle alongside some Skelmare, or shield maidens to you and I. Essentially, these are a little squad of Blade Guard proxies. I designed and really badly printed the shields for them on an FDM printer at work, and they just about work. I just about get away with it, because the layer lines kind of look a little bit like wood grain. It's a happy accident. I would do them better if I was to do them again. The axes I pinched from some old school broken orcs that I had in my box of trash. And I think they feel very Viking-y. And I figure that axes are blades anyway, right? Now, if you've watched a bit of my content previously, you'll be aware that I am 100% in on the Primaris size Space Marines. I just prefer the aesthetic. And because you can never have too many dynamically posed Space Marines, especially if you're intending to charge into the fray Space Wolf style, I bashed up some more Assault Intercessors. But I also had a buttload of bolt rifles in the box from some standard intercessors, so here are my Primaris-sized Grey Hunters. Play them as intercessors if you want, they've got the right guns. Play them as assault intercessors, they are charging and have chainswords. Play them as old school Grey Hunter proxies, they have both bolters and chainswords. You choose. But with that heavy bolt pistol being a decent hybrid type weapon these days, I tend to play them as assault intercessors. And in the process of making those, I ended up accidentally creating an ancient. I mean, in the older Space Wolves codexes, you could give various units, Grey Hunters included, a banner wielder for extra unit buffage. And as I happen to have a massive banner going spare, I made a banner wielding Primaris-sized Grey Hunter. This squad happened before 10th edition was released. No longer can you just have a Grey Hunter with a wolf banner, unfortunately. But with a bit of shuffling here and there, we essentially now have a Primaris Ancient to add to this unit, or any other. Albeit, she's on the wrong size base. But, c'est la vie. The last piece of conversion work I did, well, technically the first piece actually, but for the purposes of this video, the last converted squad I'll mention, was to take a few yet more Assault Intercessors, maybe you're sensing a theme here, and whap some jump packs and lightning claws on them. Again, this squad of now Vanguard vets was put together before 10th edition, and originally they were meant to jump into the fray as twin lightning claw wielding Wolf Guard with jump packs. Alas, no more. However, I was very pleased with them and wanted to find a role for them in this army for 10th edition, so I'm going to play them as Vanguard vets from now on, and I'm going to say that those lightning claws count as an heirloom weapon and a storm shield combination. I mean, if Wolverine can use his adamantine claws to stop bullets and all sorts of things, then I'm going to say these ladies can use their claws to do the same. I had a whole lot of fun adorning them with wolf pelts and various carnations of makeup and war paint, and I call these girls the Valkyries. No explanation necessary, I don't think. Then I've got two squads of Reavers, and I think I will probably play them as Reavers, as opposed to the thematic Hounds of Mordkai. Maybe. I'm not really sure. Reavers seem to feel a bit more flexible than the pure Hounds, but, we can see. When I started off modelling and putting base coats on these girls, I wasn't really feeling them. I thought they were just a bit too fiddly for my liking. But the more I actually stuck with them, the more enjoyable they ended up being. I generally find that the modelling and kit bashing side of the hobby is more fun to me than the painting. Sure, I love looking at the finished minis in all their colourful glory, but the painting process sometimes feels a bit too formulaic. And one of the reasons I enjoy Space Marines, and their relative eliteness, is being able to field an army with just a few squads of 5 miniatures. But deciding to have 10 and then having to follow through with 10 of the same often grinds my gears, as it did in this case. So I had to reward myself. I told myself, if I paint the blue-grey base colour, then I could go do a bit more detail work on one of the characters. And then once I'd done the browns and the leathers, I could do a bit more. And the alternating here really helped me through. And I keep telling myself I want to do an Astra Militarum army. Yeah, right. Anyway, whilst I know Reavers are probably lesser spotted in the meta armies these days, I really enjoy the idea of them. And I think that they have a little bit of shock assault distractionness about them on the tabletop. Whether they actually stick around or achieve anything else or not, is another matter entirely. Then I indulged in a bit more fluff. Sort of. I quite like the idea of Longfangs, the older, more veteran Space Wolves who now choose to sit further towards the back of the battle with heavy ranged weapons instead of, mindlessly throwing themselves into the front lines. Old school Space Wolf Longfangs would have been represented by a Devastator squad. But not here. No. These are the newly Primara-sized ladies, and they have all the modern tech. So we have a squad of Hellblasters and a squad of Infernus Marines. Now, I enjoy Infernus Space Marines for a number of different reasons, but the main one is because they are cheap to buy. There are so many of them on the second-hand market that they are now a decently costed, shorter ranged anti-infantry unit that you can get on the eBay machine for a tenner. It's just good business. I painted up one too many squads for my Black Templars army last year, so this one got repurposed. And I may or may not have run out of female faces, and they are the only squad in this army where there isn't actually one on the sergeant or another model. But, they're definitely Fenrisdottir. Look, see? Pink shoulder pad. The Hellblasters I bought knowing I was going to use the other squad for my Red Hunter come Death Watch Fortis kill team thing, but more on that in another video. These are just a nasty unit, and the shoot again on death is a very cool rule and very defiantly Space Wolf in my opinion. I tried using white ink on the plasma weapons to really sell the glow, and I'm not sure I did it all that well. More practice needed, I think, which is a good job. I've just got another squad to do. I'll probably run the Ancient with these ladies for a bit more obsec, and another reason I'll explain in a mo, but that about does it for the units in this army. The one thing I must caveat this thematic troop with is that I won't necessarily run them with the Space Wolf detachment. The sagas just feel very circumstantial. Fabulously fluffy admittedly, and seriously fun for attempting the sublime and the ridiculous in casual narrative play, and I'm all for that, but generally, and especially if I'm going to lend them to my friends to play with, I've written the list as being part of the generic Gladius Task Force detachment instead. I think it's just a bit more balanced for newer players out of the box. Not that this army is out of any box, so to speak, but also it means I can take a few targeted enhancements. I give the honour vehement to Izzy the Rune Priest to make her a bit more melee potent. She'll either attach to the Assault Intercessors as a Librarian proper, or one of the Reaver squads as a Phobos Librarian. Either way, she's going to be in combat by design, and it never hurts to make your melee characters killing machines. Plus, as named character proxies, I couldn't actually give any enhancements to Sigrid or Anya anyway. But I can, and I will give Fire Discipline to the Ancient. Attached to the Hellblasters, we're now going to give those Plasma Incinerators sustained hits. And on a 5+ if we're in the Devastator Doctrine, which we're obviously going to be at some point. And so that's what my 1000 points of Space Wolves looks like. I tried to do some maths to work out how much all of this army cost to put together, and it's been tricky as it happened across the two most recent editions of 40k and over a longer period of time, and certainly in a more peaceful way than maybe some of my other armies. The Reavers and Hellblasters were the only official boxes I purchased as new, but of course I didn't purchase either of them for the full price. And considering the Hellblaster box was split between two armies as well, yeah, it's a bit of a maths headache. But I worked it out, and I reckoned it was about 150 quid. Probably a bit higher than I would have aimed for if I was going to be starting this from scratch, but if I were to buy the same units, properly, officially, and for the full recommended retail price, it would have cost me around 235 quid in total. So we're still in bargain basement land for what is a very unique army. Now, I started this whole 750 gaming thing originally with the aim of making 750 point armies for less than 100 quid, back in the days of 9th edition where that amount of points felt like a viable scale for smaller battles. Of course, that was before Combat Patrol got rebooted and actually became a viable smaller game version of 40k proper itself. But if I was going to go by those metrics, then yes, I can definitely field a 750 army from this lot that cost around that figure. So, for the purposes of 750 Gaming Land, this is definitely a win-win army project. And I'm very happy with it, at any rate. And I really look forward to getting more table time with the Fenrisdottir, and whilst I'm more likely to field stuff as a full 1,000-point army than 750 in this edition of the game, I will also be looking at combat patrol applicability of the minis I've got, and I'll talk about that in a separate video next time. But what do you think? Do you play Space Wolves in 10th edition? Are you an advocate of the female Space Marine? What would you do, or what have you done differently? As ever, I love to get your thoughts and comments, and hopefully I'll get another video along soon looking at those aforementioned Red Hunters Deathwatch project as well, and I look forward to seeing you there for that one. But for now, thanks for watching.
Let's go!
Yes, thanks for watching. Do give this video a like and a comment if you enjoyed the content, or indeed otherwise, as I do love to read your thoughts and ideas. As ever, this is just a bit of fun for me. I don't have a regular release schedule or Patreon or anything, so hit subscribe if this is something you'd like to see more of, and you can catch my content when it happens. Hopefully, I'll see you next time.